I'm Lyndsey Smith with RealAgriculture.com. We're at Farm Tech 17. I've missed a couple years, so happy to be back. We're in the Real Ag studio and joined by, I have a hard time actually picking how I introduce you. So how do you introduce yourself?
General.
General, Roméo Dallaire.
Right.
Do you say it with the accent or not?
Oh, I'm perfectly bilingual, so
yes, of course.
I'll adapt.
Okay, wonderful. But I struggle with this because I wrote down, of course, an illustrious military career. You were a senator for 10 years, which means you have the patience of Job. And of course now are well known for your initiatives and your humanitarian initiatives as well. So it's difficult to choose which one. So General it shall be.
Thank you, my dear.
Yes, all right. So to start there, tell us about the initiatives you're involved with now.
Well, it started in Rwanda when I realized that the slaughtering and the killing were being done by a youth movement. And so in 2004, I did a fellowship at Harvard where I did the research on the use of children in conflict, which is a new phenomenon because people say, oh, they've always used them. No, we haven't. There've been a few here and there. And at the end, near the end of World War II, the Hitler Youth, but it was a sort of a last gasp.
Right.
But now what has happened since the early 90s is that they use children as the primary weapon of war.
Right.
From as young as 8 to 18. And that's by international convention, the cutoff of youth. And so my work, called the Roméo Dallaire Child Soldier Initiative, it's based at Dalhousie University. We're an institute there. What we do is we prevent the recruitment of children. So it's not the rehabilitation. We're in the front end where we're in the school systems, teaching them how not to get sucked in. And we're training armies and police forces on how to make the children less effective by professionalizing the soldiers that face them.
Okay.
So the more professional the guys are and the less kids they kill by doing, the less that the children will be useful to those who want to recruit them, and so we'll reduce the numbers that way.
So in your keynote at Farm Tech, you said that children as young as 8, as you said, or 12 or 13, they're handing them a rifle. They're not terribly useful, but it sustains war. And that's sort of the difference, right?
You were listening.
I was. I took notes even.
In fact, it is the mobilization base for every conflict that's going on now. One, because the demographics of those countries are such that in some countries they're up to 50% under 15.
Wow.
So there's all kinds of kids. And so the children are recruited, but they're very limited in what they can do. Although they can carry the weapon, they can't do any sophisticated tactics or so on.
Exactly, yeah.
And so by simply using numbers and numbers, they sustain the war.
That conflict, right.
And they don't gain anything, but they sustain it. So we were in South Sudan, where I was able to negotiate with a rebel commander, and I got 300 kids out from his command just by proving that the kids were a liability instead of being an asset.
Right.
We've also proven, because at Dalhousie we do formal research, that an organization or a non-state actor that recruits children will be an early warning sign that conflict will go to mass atrocities and possibly genocide.
Interesting.
Because if you're ready to use kids to kill, you're ready to do whatever you need.
Right. Now, so let's back things up actually quite a ways. We are 2017. It is Canada's 150th, but as you talked today, it's our 100th anniversary of Vimy Ridge, which most would say was really, it's 100 years since Canada became a nation.
Correct.
We may have been a country for 150, but we became a nation. You, of course, are frustrated that we don't necessarily have much beyond eating cake and maybe naming arenas to celebrate this momentous occasion. What would you like to see?
And that's what we did 50 years ago.
Well, I know.
I mean, 50 years ago, the only saving grace was the fact that we had Expo 67.
Right.
Because the rest of it was, but it was a policy. At the time, the municipalities needed rinks. And it's true.
Right.
We were missing infrastructure.
Right.
And so that was the plan and the front. But you'd think 50 years later, we'd have something a little more progressive. And what we've seen is that very ad hoc, last-minute ideas that don't have the funding don't have the time to bring it to fruition. And so we will end up, eating cake and missing an absolute golden opportunity of the congruence of the 150th and the 100th coming together.
Right. All right. Now, in listening, I've heard you now speak twice. I actually heard you speak a couple years ago. And one of the things that I always find amazing in your discussions is that you can relate so much of what you've seen in your career, but you still find joy and you still have hope for leading into the future. And so how do you do that? How do you reconcile just how awful some of the conflict has been and is, and how do you maintain what sustains you to push forward for something better into the future?
Pills.
And really good tea. We made sure that you got really good tea.
We make great dope in Canada.
Our Prime Minister will be so glad.
I'm sure he'd be proud of me. What I think is the fact that my mission failed in Rwanda, and I have argued that it could have succeeded, but that I had not been able to convince. I may have argued, but I didn't convince. And so I consider it a responsibility that I carry, including, I guess, even a sort of a sense of guilt of having been there and having it happen. But that got focused when my injury forced me to be released from the forces in 2000, and fortuitously I got involved in a big international conference in Winnipeg on war-affected children, and realized that the kids are sustaining the wars, so why don't I fight that battle?
Right.
And so my work is preventing the use of children as weapons of war.
And as you near the end of your presentation, you said, in times of conflict, how do you move forward? You can choose to survive it, build a wall, which is a popular thing these days. Who knows who pays for it? Or actually get to the root of the issue at home, abroad, and really wherever it's an issue.
Take offensive action.
Yes. Yeah.
No one wins defensively, waiting for something to happen. And what we've been lacking, and I would argue now for a good decade or so, is more of a offensive nature of going ahead of the game, or trying to get ahead of the game, versus simply reacting or following what the big boys are doing and say, "Oh, the Americans they're it, so we'll follow that." No. My recent trip through Uganda and the Congo, they say, "Listen, you come and tell us what you think, we'll adapt it and we'll move forward," because they feel that we will give them the real goods. We got nothing to gain by bullshitting.
Yep.
We got nothing to gain by inventing impossible things, but we have everything to gain by simply being us, transparent and trying to achieve reasonable objectives. And so that's the nature of what we are, and I think we've been stymied from actually achieving our full potential because of the leadership being so tactical, so near term, and so turned inward. We have a generation that I call the generation without borders. Those are the kids under 25 who mastered the technology.
Yes. Yeah.
They're already global. And so we're going to have to try to catch up with them, because the kids who are 11 and 12 now, in 10 years, they're going to be pushing the whole rest of us aside, because they will have mastered this revolution that is going to give them the tools that we never had to coalesce.
General Dallaire, it's been a pleasure.
That's it.
We can keep talking for hours.
I thought I'd paid by the hour.
Yeah. Well, you have to talk to that guy about that. Anyway, thank you so much for joining us.
You've been lovely.
An honor.
Thank you, Lyndsey.